When the first European ships touched the coastline of Brazil in the early 16th century, the Portuguese were not prepared for what they would encounter. They expected riches, land, and new trading partners. What they found instead was a world that challenged everything they believed about civilization. Among the coastal forests of Brazil lived a warrior tribe that would come to haunt European imagination for centuries. These people did not fight only to defend their land. They fought with an entirely different purpose, one that horrified outsiders, but carried deep cultural meaning for them. There were skilled hunters, fishermen, and farmers, but they were also fierce warriors. In battle, they captured their enemies alive. Unlike many societies that executed prisoners or enslaved them, they followed a ritual tradition. They would bring captives back to their villages, where an elaborate ceremony awaited. European missionaries and explorers described what they saw with disbelief. French chronicler Jean Day, who lived among the in the Iwuwulinges, wrote that the tribe treated their prisoners almost like honored guests. Captives were fed, allowed to speak, and sometimes even integrated into the community for a time. But the end was never in doubt. When the time came, they would gather the entire village. Warriors painted their bodies with red dye, women sang rhythmic chants, and fires lit the night. In the center, the prisoner would face his fate. To the Europeans, this looked like savagery. To the Tupinamba, it was a sacred act, believing that consuming the flesh of a brave enemy transferred courage and strength to the tribe. Jesuit priests recoiled in horror, describing these rituals as proof of barbarism. Yet, historians today view them differently. For this was not random violence. It was part of a cycle of war, revenge, and spiritual power. Each ritual reinforced the community's identity and their resistance against outsiders. The reports shocked Europe. When missionaries returned with tales of cannibal feasts, the word cannibal itself entered popular imagination. It became a symbol of the so-called savagery of the New World used by colonizers to justify conquest and forced conversion. But the story does not end there. They were not passive victims of colonization. They resisted fiercely, fighting Portuguese settlers and sometimes allying with rival European powers like the French. The memory of their cannibal rituals terrified their enemies, but it also made them legendary. Over time, disease, war, and colonization devastated. By the 17th century, their power was broken, their numbers drastically reduced. Yet their legacy survived in European art, literature, and fear. Cannibal imagery became one of the most powerful myths of the colonial era, shaping how Europeans saw the Americas for generations. The reality was more complex than the sensational stories suggested. To the Tupinamba, ritual cannibalism was not an act of madness, but a form of meaning and extension of warfare and spirituality. To the Europeans, it was a nightmare that confirmed their prejudices and fueled their campaigns of domination. Today, when we look back at these stories, we see more than shock and horror. We see how two worlds collided, how misunderstanding and fear defined the earliest encounters between Europe and South America. And we see how the word cannibal became not just a description, but a weapon of empire. They are remembered not only as warriors, but as a people who embodied resistance in one of history's most violent chapters. Their rituals may seem alien to us now, but they remind us that culture, belief, and survival take many forms, and that history is always more complicated than it first appears. This is the story of the cannibal tribe of Brazil.